James is the president of the Olivia Group. He is young, handsome, and worth over 100 million. Countless beauties dream of having an affair with him. However, he shows no interest in them. His hardened eyes are filled with only me. Outsiders say that I have finally made it through all the hardships. Only I know that he has always been waiting for someone. The love of his life. But that person is not me. It was July, and the summer was scorching. James' mother had been pressing us lately. She asked the maid to bring a decoction made from some unknown folk recipe. In the past, in order to have a child with James, I would have drunk the foul-smelling decoction without hesitation. But now, just the sight of it made me feel nauseous. James and I had been in a relationship for 4 years in college and had 3 years of married life. I accompanied him from having nothing to becoming a new business tycoon. Professionally, we are an indestructible partnership. Personally, we are an affectionate and loving couple. There are legends about us in the industry. Even the gifts from our partner companies are jade-carved branches of love-bound twigs symbolizing an affectionate couple. Before yesterday, I thought so too. Until last night. After drinking the fertility-promoting medicine sent by James' mother, I felt so flustered that I couldn't sleep. I saw the words James, I'm back flash across James' phone screen. I, who had always been full of confidence in James, somehow opened the chat history. The chat between the two started 4 years ago. It was the girl who took the initiative to add James. James, long time no see. I heard you have a new girlfriend. She's a very beautiful girl. Congratulations. James, I heard you got married. Wish you happiness. I heard you earned your first pot of gold in your business. That's amazing. At first, James was cold-hearted, and most of the time, it was the girl who took the initiative to start the conversation. Until last September. The girl typed in a hurry. James, I had a car accident. Where are you? I'm so scared. After a few minutes, came James' reply. With an unreadable tone. Where are you? Seeing this, my heart tightened. I remembered that last September was our wedding anniversary. I invited many business partners, relatives, and friends to celebrate. Just before going on stage, James suddenly said that his friend abroad had a car accident and he had to go and take care of it, then he left me in a hurry. I wanted to stop him. But I could only see his panicked back. I forced myself to go on stage. The puzzled eyes of the people below seemed to be able to skin me alive. That was the first time James, who had always been obedient to me, made me embarrassed. Later, I wasn't without doubts. But his good friend William made jokes, and diverted my attention. So it was this girl. James was so eager to see her that he didn't care about my feelings. By now, I was too scared to look further. My hands were shaking, and my whole body felt like it was in an ice cellar. I pinched my thigh hard, trying my best to calm myself down, and continued scrolling. Since September, the chat between the two has become more frequent. The girl would proudly show off her artworks to him, and James would give concise but serious comments. On the girl's birthday, James would travel across the country to date her and give her carefully prepared gifts. By this point, I was already sobbing. I turned to look at James, who was sleeping soundly in bed. For the first time, I found his handsome face so repulsive. Everyone knows that James spoils me rotten. He seems to be willing to show me his heart. When we were freshmen, he wasn't well off. In order to save money to buy me a gift, he took on 3 part-time jobs. After a month, he became extremely thin. When I had a stomachache during my period, he ran through 3 streets in the middle of the night in the rain to buy me painkillers. When I wanted to eat the snow-covered bean paste from my hometown, his hands were splashed with oil several times while making this dish for me. When we graduated from college, he secretly bought a diamond ring and proposed to me on the playground where the catkins were flying. I was so moved that I burst into tears and nodded under the blessings of our classmates. That this James, who was so good to me and loved me, betrayed me. My heart was bleeding. Coming back to my senses, I refused the decoction the maid handed me. At this time, James' mother came downstairs in her pajamas. Seeing that I didn't drink the medicine, her face darkened. Olivia, you and James have been married for 3 years and still have no children. Listen to Mom, this is for your own good. Don't you want to have a lovely child with James? This again. At first, I believed James' mother's words. I went for checkups, drank Chinese herbal medicine, and tried folk recipes, all for the sake of having a child with James. As a result, I suffered a lot but with no effect. The most terrifying thing was that I was actually going to continue like this in the past. 3 years of married life had smoothed out my edges and killed the once unrestrained Olivia. What was left was a domesticated, selfless Olivia. I was suddenly shocked. Mom, maybe James should go for a checkup. James' mother suddenly became like an enraged lioness, saying harshly, Olivia, I really didn't expect you to be such a woman. What could be wrong with James? You're really too selfish, making up such an excuse just to avoid drinking the medicine. Then came a barely audible whisper. She's really not as good as Sophia. My heart skipped a beat. Sophia? The nickname of the girl who had an ambiguous relationship with James was Sophia. I suddenly realized that they all knew. James' mother knew about Sophia and James' friend William also knew. They just treated me like a fool, looking down on me as I was being played by James. Reality slapped me hard. I treated them with sincerity, but all I got were ingrates. James' mother, William, and James were all the same. The creak of the door opening dispelled the tense atmosphere in the room. James was wearing a straight royal blue suit, with deep-set eyes and a radiant face. Seeing the decoction in the maid's hand, he frowned in understanding. Mom, I said it. Don't give these to Olivia. James' mother changed her arrogant attitude in front of me and smiled amiably. Oh, it's just for tonifying your bodies. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. James ignored her and walked quickly towards me, gently hugging me. His cold eyes softened. Olivia, did you miss me? I bought your favorite mung bean cakes. His amber eyes were sincere and full of anticipation. He looked like a puppy begging for mercy. Look. He's such a hateful person. He doesn't love me but still tries to please me. Nestled in his broad and warm embrace, I felt as if I was in the depths of winter with cold hands and feet. At night, he hugged me from behind and kissed my neck. I reached out to stop him and asked him with a bit of desperation. James, I miss home. Can you go back to Northeast China with me tomorrow to see my parents? My tone carried a sadness and pleading that James couldn't understand. Tomorrow was the day the woman was coming back to the country. As long as James agreed to go with me, I could pretend that everything. James' slightly hoarse voice interrupted my fantasy. Olivia, the company is really busy these days. Can we go in a few days? His voice was indifferent, but his eyes were full of affection, without a trace of guilt. It was as if I was being unreasonable. My heart, which had gradually warmed up because of the fantasy, slowly calmed down until there was no ripple. Okay. I heard myself reply numbly. I didn't sleep a wink all night. Early the next morning, I could feel him gently kiss the center of my brows, then tiptoe out of the room. My nose twitched. What on earth was he trying to do? If he had told me earlier that he had someone else in his heart, I would never have gotten involved with him, never. An hour later, I put on my tracksuit and a peaked cap and secretly followed him. To avoid being discovered, I hailed a passing car. The driver's knowing and pitying look made me feel extremely embarrassed. Just like that, we followed James' car to the airport. I watched helplessly as James, all smiles, led the girl to a nearby 5-star hotel. There was a suffocating silence in the car. I saw the driver's mouth open and close, as if wanting to say something but holding back. I couldn't care less. After paying the fare, I quickly followed the two in front. The hotel elevator required a key card. Watching the elevator stop on the 7th floor, I made up my mind and turned to the emergency exit, climbing up to the 7th floor step by step. Sweat dampened my pale face. I leaned awkwardly against the door of the stairwell, watching from afar as James passionately kissed the girl, opened the door, and finally the door slammed shut. I don't know if it was because the hotel air conditioner was set to low. Even though it was the hottest days of summer, I shivered, and my teeth chattered uncontrollably. My heart was filled with despair, and I stumbled back home. James' mother was leisurely lying in a rocking chair. Seeing me come back, she quickly reminded me, "Olivia, don't forget to drink the medicine. It's more effective when it's hot. I also made an appointment for you to have acupuncture in the afternoon. Don't forget to go." I hadn't eaten breakfast since I woke up. My stomach was empty. I rummaged around but couldn't find anything to eat except the decoction. Hearing her words, thinking of the bitter and unpalatable decoction and the stinging pain of the thin silver needles piercing my skin, a sudden burst of anger welled up inside me. All that was left in my heart was hatred for this mother-son pair. I didn't answer her. Instead, I went to the storage room to find a handy axe, then went back to the kitchen and smashed it hard at the clay pot containing the medicine. Accompanied by the crackling sound of the clay pot breaking, the medicinal juice in the pot splashed everywhere. Looking at the mess on the floor, I felt a sense of satisfaction. For James' sake, I had endured the nausea and been submissive to James' mother. But now, I didn't want to endure it anymore. Hearing the breaking sound, James' mother turned her head in disbelief and looked at me. "Olivia, you're really crazy," I sneered. There was more crazy stuff to come. I picked up the axe and walked to the storage room at the end of the second floor. This was a forbidden area in James' house. James was extremely gentle to me, but he just wouldn't let me enter this room. In the past, I respected and trusted him. But now he had made my trust in him so worthless. I swung the axe hard at the door lock, and with a clang, the lock that had been used for years broke. Although I had prepared myself mentally, what I saw still pierced my eyes. The dim room was filled with intimate photos of James and Sophia. In the photos, James looked young and full of spirit, and Sophia was fair and delicate. From a distance, they looked like a perfect couple. So it was a love from their youth. I was blind and stupid, not knowing my place and getting in the way of a pair of lovers. James' mother, who had followed me, seeing that she couldn't hide it anymore, sneered at me triumphantly. "I'm not kidding. Sophia is beautiful." Back then, she and James were an enviable couple. If it weren't for... I expressionlessly swung the axe, interrupting her gloating words. The axe passed by her cheek and deeply embedded itself in the pale wall. James' mother was so frightened that she collapsed to the ground and crawled out on all fours, muttering trembling lie. "Crazy, she's really crazy." Crazy, maybe. James' mother was so scared by me that she didn't dare leave her room. I bet she was trembling like all in James. But James probably wouldn't answer. He was busy with his lover at the moment. I sat indifferently on the sofa, with a long-lost sense of calm in my heart. Just like this, I sat from dawn until sunset. When James came back, he was startled by me sitting quietly in the dim room. "Why didn't you answer the phone?" I guessed he didn't receive his mother's call. Thinking I was questioning him. His amber eyes darkened slightly, and he softly explained to me, "I was too busy in the meeting and my phone ran out of battery." I sneered. "James, is it interesting to lie to me?" Seeing that he was still pretending, I simply laid it all out. "The five-star hotel is quite comfortable, right? The view on the 7th floor is nice." His face instantly lost its color. And his Adam's apple bobbed. I heard his difficult voice, "Olivia. Sophia just returned to the country. I have to take care of her." I thought I had no more feelings for James, but hearing the name Sophia blurted out by him, my tears still streamed down like a broken string. I didn't cry when I gave up the opportunity to study abroad on a government scholarship for James. I didn't cry when our competitors snatched away our clients when we were just starting the business. I didn't cry when I was constantly harassed by James' mother because we didn't have a child in 3 years of marriage. But now, I was crying my heart out as if I wanted to cry out all the grievances of these years. 7 years. A full 7 years of my life had been wasted, James. Do you have a heart at all? If you don't love me, you could have just said so. Why did you lie to me? Am I not worthy of your sincere treatment? James hugged me with a pained expression. His arms were like steel, making it impossible for me to break free. I saw his eyes were red. Olivia, I love you. I mockingly tugged at the corner of my mouth. James, stop disgusting me. Let go, let me go. I struggled hard and finally bit down hard on his arm. He let out a hiss of pain and released me. James, if you're still a man, divorce me as soon as possible and marry your Sophia. Don't dirty my eyes. I picked up the suitcase I had prepared long ago and walked towards the door. James wanted to chase after me, but was stopped by his mother, who came out of the room. When I reached the door of the villa, I could still vaguely hear James' mother complaining, James. She's a lunatic. I didn't hesitate at all and strode out. Although the divorce agreement had been sent to James, he remained indifferent. My urging text messages only received his pleas for me to turn back. A silent battle began to tug back and forth between us. One day, when I was having a meeting in the company, a flower delivery rider brought in a large bouquet of bright blue roses. The blue roses were delicate, beautiful, and expensive. Just like James' love for me, gorgeous on the outside but with an extremely short flowering period. The directors and assistants in the meeting praised one after another. These roses are so beautiful. James is really thoughtful. Mr. James and General Manager Olivia are really affectionate. They've been married for 3 years, and it's still like the honeymoon period. After all, they're a couple who started from scratch. They're different from others. I laughed, self-deprecating lie. A couple who started from scratch. It was just a joke. Compared with his childhood sweetheart first love, it was nothing. I picked up the bouquet and threw it into the trash can, and announced calmly, James and I are getting divorced. Don't worry, everyone. The equity has been allocated, and it won't have a big impact on the company. After dropping this bombshell, I walked out of the meeting room, ignoring the astonished looks at everyone. I was tired of James' boring tactics and wanted to go to his villa to have a real showdown with him. Standing in front of the villa, I tried to enter the password, but it kept showing an error. I was so angry that I almost laughed. I called James. When the phone was answered, a sweet female voice came through. Hello, who is this? Open the door. The girl on the other end of the line seemed to react only then. Is that Sister Olivia? I'm sorry. James and I are not convenient right now. Listening to the beeping sound on the other end of the phone, I turned off my mobile phone. What a joke. Did they think I had been doing nothing all these years? I might not have much else, but I had plenty of strength. I picked a few stones of suitable size from the flower beds around the villa. I walked around the front of the villa, aimed at James' bedroom from the side, and threw the stones up with force. I was satisfied to hear the sound of broken glass and the woman scream. Thinking that one stone wasn't enough to make a statement, I threw a few more up. Presumably, they thought my gift was good enough, and I was invited into the villa. James came forward and tried to get close to me, but I slapped him. Did you change the password? James was stunned. He suddenly turned around and glared at the pitiful Sophia behind him. Olivia, as long as you're willing to come back, you can set any password you want. Sophia, who was standing behind him, changed her expression. I looked around and saw that the interior of the villa had been completely changed. The vases and blankets that I had carefully selected in the living room had been replaced with a more flamboyant style. No wonder, she was an artist who had studied abroad. I sneered. No need. You'd be doing me a huge favor if you just signed the divorce agreement as soon as possible. James. At this point, are you trying to keep me because you love me, or are you doing it out of your own selfishness? James. Don't force me to hate you. The hand that James had stretched out to hug me dropped down dejectedly. Finally, I got the divorce agreement as I wished. Before leaving, I turned back and smiled at the two of them with different expressions. James, a leopard can't change its spots. How can you be sure that the person who betrayed you once won't do it again? When I saw the chat records, I had already asked a private detective to find out everything about James and Sophia's past. That private detective was quite capable, and I was an old client of his. I had never thought that the methods I used to deal with business rivals would one day be used on the person sleeping next to me. The so-called the closest and yet sometimes the most distant relationship is that of husband and wife was exactly like this. The story of the two of them was as cliché and melodramatic as it could be. They were childhood sweethearts, innocent and in love, and later got together as a matter of course. Both families were well off and had made early plans for their children. The problem was that James' family went bankrupt when he was in his senior year of high school. His father couldn't bear the blow and committed suicide by jumping off a building. James and his mother had to sell their property to barely pay off the huge debt. Sophia's family was snobbish. They called off the engagement on the spot and sent Sophia abroad. Whether Sophia was willing or not, no one knew. Time passed, and James became the well-known president of the Olivia Group, while Sophia's father's business was getting worse and worse. So, Sophia had to return to the country. Sophia's family was patriarchal and sycophantic. This time they latched onto James and wouldn't stop until they got something out of him. But all of this had nothing to do with me anymore. I resigned from my position as the vice president of the Olivia Group, sold my shares, and went back to my hometown with a large sum of money. I would just stand by and watch as his empire rose and fell. In the golden September, I returned to my hometown where I was born and raised. Time seemed to flow especially slowly in the small county in northeast China. I didn't tell my parents and just carried my suitcase back to the village. My father, who was slaughtering a pig, was so shocked to see me that he dropped the meat-cutting knife in his hand. My mother came up and asked me, "Olivia, why didn't James come back with you?" In front of my closest family, I finally didn't have to pretend to be strong. I choked with sobs in a dejected way. "We got divorced, Mom. James cheated on me." My father was so angry that he picked up the knife and wanted to teach James a lesson. But I stopped him. My mother gently stroked my hair and told me to stay here and rest for a few days. I started to follow my father every day to slaughter pigs and sell pork at the market. When I was young and naive, I used to dislike my father's rough job. But it was the years of constantly slaughtering and carrying pigs that gave me more strength than ordinary people and protected me from being bullied during my years of making a living away from home. When I was young, I was so ambitious that I just wanted to make money and prove myself. But when I finally had everything under control, I fell in love with the simple rural life filled with the sounds of chickens and dogs. When my life was gradually becoming leisurely and stable, a luxurious Bentley made a high-profile entrance into the village. More precisely, it stopped in front of my house. A tough and handsome man got out of the car. When he smiled, there was a dimple on his cheek. As soon as he saw me, he held my hand tightly as if we were long-lost relatives. "Are you Vice General Manager Olivia? I've heard so much about you." His slick tone made me dislike him. I already had a pretty good idea of what he wanted. Since my teenage years, I had been competitive and always wanted to be the best at everything. After graduating from a prestigious university, even when starting a business, I wasn't willing to be just James' sidekick. James was a computer genius, but didn't understand the ways of the world. I single-handedly took on half of the work in the planning department of the Olivia Group, held half of the company's client resources, and was also on good terms with the key people in the R&D department. In the few days since I returned home, many competitors of the Olivia Group had contacted me, trying to poach me. I had no intention of kicking James when he was down, so I refused them. "I know what you're trying to do, but I won't agree. Please leave." The man blocked my way. "I'm not one of those who are after the client resources in your hands. I value General Manager Olivia's abilities. I've heard about General Manager Olivia's past achievements and really admire you. Now our company is still developing. If I'm lucky enough to have your appreciation, I'm willing to offer 3 of the company's shares." Our company may have some overlapping business with the Olivia Group, but not completely. It won't pose a threat to the Olivia Group. Perhaps his sincere eyes reminded me of James when I first met him. I was moved by him. I said goodbye to my parents and returned to a busy life. Every day, I was out early and back late, which made me feel like I was back in the early days of starting a business. A group of energetic young people were racing against time, regardless of anything. On the day when our company's products sold extremely well, I saw the news of the remarriage of the president of the Olivia Group on my phone. The bride was, as expected, Sophia. Unconsciously, the words that James' mother had once said, "She's really not as good as Sophia," came to my mind. I snorted, thinking with a bit of anticipation and a bit of schadenfreude about how the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship between James' mother and Sophia would be. Perhaps even God couldn't stand Sophia. A few days later, I received complaints from several former colleagues in the Olivia Group whom I was familiar with. James is really crazy. He made Sophia, who knows nothing, the deputy manager of the planning department. Sophia makes decisions without thinking and has offended many old clients. The general manager has to suit the clients and deal with Sophia at the same time. He's totally overwhelmed. The whole company is in chaos. I smiled, then told the Human Resources Department of our company to post more recruitment information recently and offer better treatment. Since our company was in an upward developing stage, we would accept as many experienced-told employees as possible. I had said that I wouldn't actively poach employees from James, but I couldn't stop people from jumping ship on their own initiative. Sure enough, a month later, I saw many familiar faces in the company, including the capable former general manager of the planning department of the Olivia Group. I saw James again at my promotion party. Due to my outstanding abilities and sharp insights, I lead the company to make correct decisions on many occasions. As a result, the company's board of directors promoted me to president during a meeting, which was one level higher than my position in the Olivia Group. I invited all the company's employees to the largest local gathering and team-building venue to celebrate. Halfway through, I went to the restroom to wash my hands and heard a familiar deep voice. I said, "My mom is a bit sensitive. Don't make her angry. Drink the medicine when she asks you to." It was James. I hadn't seen him for a long time and he looked much haggard. I heard that not only did Sophia enter the company, but she also wanted to arrange a position for her younger brother. The two of them caused chaos in the company, which led to many employees resigning and the company's revenue declining. No wonder he was so stressed. Just from his tone, it seemed that Sophia had had quite a few quarrels with James' mother at home. I was about to leave when I suddenly met James' eyes. His once bright peach-shaped eyes were now full of bloodshot. Seeing me, his eyes lit up with joy. "Olivia, it's you. Long time no see. How have you been recently? I miss you so much." As he spoke, he approached me, seemingly wanting to hug me. I picked up the mop beside me and pushed him aside. "James, you're a married man now. Please stay away from me. You disgust me." James looked at me in disbelief. At this moment, a clear voice came from behind me. "Olivia is now the president of Cada Group. Mr. James really isn't worthy of her." It was Julian, the man who came to the village to find me. I later learned that he was one of the directors of Cada. James' face darkened. "Who are you, her new boyfriend? What right do you have to speak?" Julian found it a bit funny and winked at me. "I'm Olivia's fiancé. I warn you to stay away from her." He emphasized the word fiancé, which made James' face turn livid. Subsequently, I took Julian's arm and walked into the hall without looking back to see what expression James had. After walking a distance, I let go of Julian's arm, smiled sweetly, and thanked him. Perhaps because I was far away from the harm of James' mother's folk remedies. Or perhaps because of my successful career, my already beautiful face was even more radiant. Julian was momentarily dazzled. "Maybe you can hold my arm all the time, if you'd like." After that night, Julian seemed to have a sudden change and started to pursue me crazily. I was grateful to Julian for saving me from my depression. But I still didn't want to have an office romance again. Although I didn't want to admit it, James had really hurt me deeply. Olivia, I'm not James, and you're not the person you used to be. Give me a chance to prove myself. Say goodbye to your past self formally. I agreed to him. And he didn't disappoint me. He gave me a full sense of security. His love might not be as passionate as James, but it was like the spring rain, quietly and subtly influencing me. A year later, we held an engagement ceremony. When Julianne nervously put the engagement ring on me, there was a burst of applause from the audience, including both our parents and the company's employees. We were blessed. This reminded me of my wedding with James. James' mother claimed to be unwell and absent from the ceremony, which made me lose face. At that time, some media even reported that it was an unblessed marriage. Thinking about it now, it was absurd and ridiculous. Speak of the devil. And he appears. After the engagement, I saw James and Sophia, who came uninvited. James looked even more haggard. He stared at me with a pale face, saying nothing. Sophia, on the other hand, said to me triumphantly, "Sister Olivia, I'm pregnant with James' child. And you're engaged too. It's really a double celebration, isn't it?" I've always been straightforward with such annoying people, for fear that her small-brained mind couldn't understand me. "Who's celebrating with you? Did I invite you? Get out." The security guards who heard the commotion rudely drove them out. Looking at Sophia's haughty look, I was feeling generous and reminded James, find some time to go to the hospital for a checkup, especially the male department." I saw Sophia stiffen. James looked at me angrily, and the surrounding guests, thinking I was humiliating James, politely burst into laughter. I shook my head and was led by Julian to toast Julian's parents. It was ridiculous to think that during the 3-year marriage without children, James' mother always thought it was my problem, and I was forced into the strange cycle of self-proof. And no one expected that it was actually James who had the problem. A friend of mine in the hospital accidentally saw Sophia taking James' sample for a checkup. The test results were quite funny. The rate of abnormal sperm fragments was high, and the motility was low. Basically, he couldn't have his own children. Even if there was a pregnancy, there would be a miscarriage in the first few months. The fact that Sophia's belly was so big without any problems clearly showed that she had cuckolded James. I thought I had been more than kind by reminding James. I thought with a bit of schadenfreude. 2 years later, I gave birth to a lovely daughter. The crystallization of my love with Julian. She was very well behaved and didn't give me much trouble. The delivery process was so smooth that even the doctor was surprised. Even so, I could still feel Julian tightly gripping my hand by the hospital bed. When I looked up, I found him in tears, crying like a child. No more births. Never again. The next day, he made an appointment for a vasectomy. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Julian's mother held a grand welcome ceremony for me. Not many people were invited, only both parents and close friends were present. Julian's mother knew about Julian's vasectomy and nodded in approval. His father had a vasectomy long ago. We don't believe in the old saying that many children bring more blessings. We just want one little princess and spoil her however we want. I know she is deliberately trying to comfort me, fearing that I might have a grudge in my heart. I was touched by her delicate thoughtfulness and gently hugged her, feeling her warm embrace. We named our daughter Luna. When Luna was 1 month old, Julian's family held a grand full moon banquet. During the guests' casual gossip, I learned about James' current situation. He was doing very badly. Last year, Sophia gave birth, but the baby was born deformed. James finally couldn't help but suspect and went to the hospital for a checkup. He also did a paternity test with the baby. The results made him collapse. He was infertile, and the child wasn't his. Under his questioning, Sophia finally confessed everything. The child was actually his cousin's. Since Sophia found out that James couldn't have children, in order to secure her position and avoid being tormented by James' mother's medicine, she secretly got together with James' cousin, trying to have a child secretly. The ridiculous thing was that there was a genetic problem in James' mother's family, and the child born was a deformed one. James was devastated. He beat Sophia, who was still in the confinement period, and then divorced her. He also kicked his cousin and Sophia's younger brother, who were working in the Olivia group, out of the company. He also became estranged from his mother. Unexpectedly, before leaving, his cousin stole the core information of the Olivia group and sold it to the company's competitor. The business world is like a battlefield. With the leakage of the core information of the Olivia group, the rival companies, like jackals that smelled blood, dragged down the already struggling Olivia group. The day Luna was born was the day the Olivia group announced its bankruptcy. A business myth ended in James' hands. I wasn't surprised at all. It was exactly what I had expected. Just like what I said to James back then. Those who betray will eventually be betrayed. What goes around comes around. I thought I would never have any contact with James again. Until Luna was 4 years old, I took her to play in a nearby park and accidentally saw a familiar face. It was James. After so many years, the once high-spirited look on his handsome face was gone, leaving only dejection and disappointment. His once muscular body had also lost its shape due to long-term alcoholism. He probably tittied himself up specially to see me. I looked at him warily, worried that he might harm Luna. He gave a bitter smile. "Olivia, don't be afraid of me. I'm sorry. I couldn't hold on to the Olivia group." Although the collapse of the Olivia group gave me a sense of satisfaction, after all, I had once regarded it as my own child. In the dead of night, I couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. But I didn't show it. You don't need to feel guilty. That was your company. The person you've always let down is yourself. James didn't deny it. He asked me with a hint of pleading. "Olivia, can you forgive me? I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have cheated. The one I've always liked in my heart is." I covered Luna's ears and sternly stopped him. "That's enough, James. I have no interest in who you like or love. Stop pestering me, it's all your own doing to end up like this." He looked at me dejectedly, like a dog. When we were in love, I thought he was extremely cute, but now I just find him extremely boring. I led Luna and was about to walk back. I heard James' voice from behind. "Olivia, I'm leaving today. Be happy and always be joyful." But like when I left James' house back then, I kept walking forward without looking back. Not long after, news came that James had driven Sophia and his cousin off a cliff, resulting in their deaths. When they were rescued, all three had no signs of life. This incident made big news locally, and countless media rushed to report the love-hate relationship among them. It was said that James' mother's younger brother and Sophia's family kept making a scene every day, demanding compensation from James' mother. James' mother had no choice but to flee to a foreign place incognito. Only then did I suddenly realize that the goodbye James said to me that day was a final farewell. I didn't know how to face this matter, so I simply buried it together with the gifts James had given me in the past in the back garden, never to see the light of day again. Another midsummer came. My story with James started in midsummer and also ended in midsummer. In the distance, there were the sounds of birds and the fragrance of flowers. There were my lover and my baby. They were the ones I should cherish right in front of me. I turned around and walked towards them, never looking back again. I was born into a wealthy family. I had my parents' love and the company of my childhood sweetheart. In my happiest moment, they suddenly left me. James' family went bankrupt, and his fiancée broke off the engagement. The proud son of heaven fell from grace overnight. There were gossips around, pointing fingers at my mother. I insisted on moving to another city with my mother, repeating my senior high school studies, and was admitted to a big university. To support the family, I worked day and night without end until I met Olivia. My Olivia, as her name suggests. was like a passionate rose, warming up my gloomy world. She was my dawn, and I once swore to hold her in the palm of my hand for my whole life. Olivia was a very strong-willed and independent-minded person. She insisted on accompanying me in starting a business and wanted to be in control of everything in the company and the team. After drinking with clients until 3 in the morning once, I saw her smiling brightly, leaning in my arms. At that moment, I thought how lucky I was to meet such a wonderful girl. On the day of our college graduation, I proposed to her. When I saw tears streaming down her cheeks, I panicked and wiped away her tears, vowing never to make her cry for me again. I broke my promise. Sophia somehow got in touch with me. I had no intention of chatting with her. But when she told me she had a car accident, I somehow left Olivia behind. I felt guilty, but I couldn't help myself. As the saying goes, the truth will out. Olivia found out the truth. I saw tears welling up in her eyes, and her clear-cut eyes were filled with hatred for me. I was scared and begged her not to leave, but she didn't look back at me even once. Sophia got in touch with my mother behind my back, emptied the house and replaced everything with new decorations. I flew into a rage at them, but I could no longer find any traces of Olivia's existence. Olivia saw all this and coldly proposed a divorce. I no longer had any reason to hold her back. My heart was filled with despair, and I married Sophia. After that, Sophia got pregnant. I thought I could finally have a child of my own. But in the end, I found out I was like a joke. The company went bankrupt, and I moved to another city to work for others. In the dead of night, my hatred for Sophia and my cousin kept growing. I knew it was time to make an end. There were legends about us in the industry. Even the gifts from our partner companies were jade-carved branches of love-tied branches symbolizing an affectionate couple. Olivia became even more radiant after leaving me. I was the one who wasted her time. Now she's free. I knew very well that she still wouldn't forgive me. After leaving Olivia, I staked out Sophia and my cousin for 3 days and finally found the opportunity. At the moment the car fell off the cliff, I saw the terrified expressions on their faces. I felt a sense of pleasure in my heart. Olivia, from now on, there will be no one in this world who can make you suffer. In a trance, I returned to my college days. At that time Olivia was smiling at me like a flower.